Hey everyone, how is it going? In this video, we're going to be talking about TrueSky, and we're going to run through some of the core functionality of the add-on, some of the features, and how your environments are affected by some of these settings. So this is a scene that I've already prepared. This is not so much a follow-along as it is more just sort of an introduction to the tool. But if you've got a scene similar to this, then by all means follow along. So let's get started. As we can see, let's get into a rendered mode. Let this do its thing. So we can see we've got a really nice looking scene, deserty. I do always go for desert scenes because they work really well in sort of direct hard light. They're very easy to light and to make look good. But we have a desert scene to start with. We've got a little bit of water here. We've got some terrain stuff going on. We've got terrains in the background. If I enable my sort of outlines, we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 4-part terrains, or 4 parts of terrains, or 4 terrain parts. And these are all separate objects. And this is a scene that I've set up. And if we look at some of the items, they are quite large. This back one here, this is 340 meters tall. Always work to scale when you are working in CGI. It really helps sell the final sort of renders. And also, because it's path tracing and the way the cameras are set up, you get more accurate results by just working to scale. So work to scale. So as you can see, some of these items are pretty large, and this one here is quite close to the camera. We have got some other things in the scene, like some assets that we've got going on, just give a bit more sense of scale. And if we sort of look at True Terrain, because all of this was made with True Terrain, we can look at some of the assets here. We've got like the rocks and things that we've got scattered around the scene too. So let's look at lighting. How do we light with TrueSky? So we can see here we've got like the Nishita sky. This is the one I tell a lot of people to go for, just because it's really accurate, really a good sky system for Blender. But obviously it lacks any atmospherics, it lacks sort of clouds and things like that. So let's fix that. So we've got -57 and 12 degrees. This is what we're going to try and imitate with TrueSky. So to start it off, we just click Use TrueSky. And this will set up your scene. If you've got a camera in the scene, it'll set up your camera and things like that accurately so that you can view the mist and you can view the fog and you can view everything in the distance and how the light affects it. So we can see here, we can just hide this. If we go to the Sky tab, we can see these are our basic sky tools. So True Sol is the primary sun or star in the sky, and all of the settings for that here pretty similar to what you are used to. Up here we have some volume presets, and these are for sort of speeding up your renders or making them really high quality. And you can see obviously as we swap between the two of them, it changes the actual look of some of these effects. So we're going to start off with the fastest one, just so we can start sort of work in a real-time manner. So what we want to do is we want to reduce the height a little bit, and if we set this back up to mimic what we had earlier, it's like -57 or something like that, I think, and a higher. Here we go. So let me just check what that was. I feel like I'm being silly. 12.7 and -57, yeah. -12.7 and -57. So this is what we had earlier. And as you can see, there's fog and haze and things going on in the background. So what we can do is we can disable the fog for a moment and just look at the haze. And we can increase the intensity of the sun just a touch. We can increase the intensity of the sky just a touch so we can get a bit more light going on. So we can see here we've got this background haze, or this like distance haze effect. And as we swap between the presets, we can see that it affects the quality of that, and also like the render time. So if we go here, we can see it's really fast, and if we go to this one, we can see it's not as fast. So we've got the fastest preset running. Now we've got our sky sort of lit how we want it to be. I'm happy with where the sky position is, or the sun position is in the sky. I'm just going to affect sort of maybe the air, the color of the sky, maybe the dust effect in the sky. Maybe I want to touch the ozone, make the sky a little bit bluer. We can see that the sky lights up, like the blue intensity affects the shadows and things from the light. What I think I might do is come to the haze options. Now, in between these, we've got the hue saturation values for TrueSky, so we can adjust the hue and make those scenes different colors. So if we wanted to go for, let's say, something a little bit more Martian, we can reduce the saturation, and now we've got like a Martian sky. And then binary is to enable the secondary sun, and then the binary HSV is exactly the same as the sol HSV. But we're going to affect the haze that we've got going on here. So what I think I'm going to do is I don't want it to be as hazy, sort of off from the sun. So I'm going to increase the inistropy. And what the inistropy does is if we bring the sun down a touch, let's see if we can get the sun sort of here. Okay. So we can see the sun is here somewhere. Let's have a look at the, it's here. Here it is. Right. Increase the height of the sun and reduce that. So here's the sun. And if we reduce the inistropy, we can see that the way the light scatters through the volumetrics sort of disperses out a bit more. And if we increase the inistropy to a really high value, maybe something like 0.9, we get this glow effect. And that is a high anisotropic value. So that's where light sort of passes through and then gets condensed down around the light source and can become really blown out. So let's go back to that. And we can see it now. We've got this really huge glow. And if we reduce that down, we can see it's less so, and now you can see the hotspot of the sun. So I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to change the position back to -57 and height 12.7, something like this, so that we get less of this glowy effect on the edges here. And if, like I say, if you see here, we can reduce that, but if we increase it, we'll get less of a glowy effect there. And we can increase the scattering if we want to give it more of a hazy look, like the air is dry and sort of filled with dust particles. Or we can increase maybe like the pollution level to make the sky a little bit more red, which we can do. But I'm going to leave it as it is right now and reduce the scattering back to 1, maybe 2. Yeah, no, 1. Okay. And now I think I want to add a little bit of fog in. So how do we do the fog? Well, there's 2 options. You can use the fog from the world shader. That will add a fog layer in. And this fog layer, you can adjust sort of where it starts and where it ends, and we can increase the scattering value. And if you get this kind of effect and you're thinking, wait, what's going on? That looks terrible. It's just because the volume presets are faster, so the light bounces that it's scatter and go through. And then maybe I want the fog to be more of an orangey colour. We can reduce the darkness of this a little bit, and if we change the colour of the sort of shadowy bits of that, and maybe increase the quality of the air. No, right, we're going to reduce the quality of the air and then reduce the amount of scattering. And this is the effect that we now get. So we can see that the fog is coming through, or the light's coming through the fog. And if we sort of put the sun behind, let's get this really low, we get this really foggy effect. And we can increase, like I said earlier, we can increase that and make it really, really foggy if we wanted to. But I don't want it to look like that. So we're going to reduce that. And we're going to put this back to -57, change the height to 12.7 for this one. But I'm not entirely sure I want this to be such a dusty looking scene. So we can look at this later. We can reduce the inistropy again, like we did before, or we can increase the inistropy to a higher value so that we get this sort of fade off on the edges here. But to sort of make this look a little bit more natural, I think I'm going to either add some clouds in first and then look at the fog options. So let's look at the clouds. So we can add some clouds in. When we add the clouds in, if the scene goes dark, don't worry, that just means you're inside the shadow of a cloud. But we can increase the altitude of these. I'm going to set them to about 4,500 meters up, and I'm going to change the cloud type. So let's go back to the sky and turn the fog off for now. And let's look at the clouds and the positions of these clouds. So cloud amount, I'm not going to touch just yet. And the density, I'm not really going to touch just yet. But we can look at the coverage, because this will sort of show us where the clouds are and where the gaps are in the sky. I'm going to set that back down to 0 for now. And we're going to adjust the location. I want to position the clouds a little bit differently. So to do this, I'm going to use these values here. So if we open that up a little bit, we can see X, Y, and Z. And this will change the location of the clouds along the X, Y, and Z. And if you look up here at your sort of viewport axis widget, you can see that X and negative X are this way. So the clouds are moving sort of towards this red point. And if we mess with the Y, we can see that it moves across from left to right, green to green. So I think I'm kind of okay with the clouds being there. Maybe I want to reduce the cloud amount to something like 0.5 and let's increase the coverage. No, let's not increase the coverage. Maybe 0.5, and let's just have a look at changing the location again of these. So kind of like that there, the way the cloud's casting a shadow across the ground here. But maybe we can move it along and put it right behind the mountains here. Yeah, I think we're going to go for that. So that's the effect I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get the clouds right behind the mountains and have a look at that. Maybe if I increase the height of the clouds, so that's like the actual depth of the cloud volume, that gives a bit more density. I don't think we want that. Not much happens with these if we increase the density too much because they're already very dense. But let's have a look at maybe changing the amount a bit more. I think maybe potentially 2. What if we increase the height of the altitude of these clouds? Okay, so a higher altitude. Set these back to 1. Okay, that's nice. We've got the cloud sort of just there casting over the terrain. That's looking nice. And then if we go back and turn the fog on, let's have a look. Okay, yeah, that's looking nice. Let's increase the distance of where the fog's going to start, because I don't want the fog to be covering everywhere. The fog just covering over here is completely fine. And if we change the height of this, let's just change the height by a couple of hundred. See if we get a bit of fall off. No. Okay, let's leave that as it is. So I've now set up these sort of fog and clouds. I'm going to turn them off, disable the clouds. If you do it here, if you like actually disable the clouds here using use clouds, it will turn them off and reset them back to the original values. So you can either, if you wanted to, you can just set the density to 0, and that'll make them faster. Or alternatively, you can just disable them here in the viewport. So now we're going to go to fog. So I want to get a little bit of fog across sort of the ground here. So we've got 2 different fogs that we can use. We can either use the surface fog, which is designed for sort of closer ups or areas where fog sort of lingers on the surface of something like water during a hot day or something. So we might use the surface fog. We probably will use the surface fog actually. And then we might use the rolling fog for maybe some fog in the background over here. So how does the fog work? Well, if we select an object, the fog will scale up to that size of the object, so it'll sort of encompass the whole object. So if we select this bit here, and then go to create fog, surface fog, then the fog will sort of get brought straight in. And then what we can do with this is we can either select the fog, and it'll keep all of these options here, but we want to select it just for a moment. Let's show our overlays. Let's have a look here. And I'm going to set this to one of the faster ones so we can see things going on a little bit better. And we're going to go over to this surface fog. So I'm going to increase the density just for sort of visibility purposes, to see where the fog actually is. And we can see that it's really sort of high at the minute. So I'm going to reduce the scale of this. So just scale, Z, and then we're going to apply the scale. And then we're going to move it up a little bit until we can see it across the surface. That's looking nice. And we can increase it just a little bit more if we want to. Okay, great. So this is where I want the fog to sit, but it's too thick and there's not enough sort of like wavy patches going on. If we disable it and re-enable it, we can see that the fog is creating what it's creating. So let's go to the fog scale values. And we're going to set these to something a lot higher. So X and Y, we're going to set these quite high. And the reason that we're doing that is so that we can get a little bit more like fog patches going on. And we can set the Z on this maybe to something like 2 to flatten it down a little bit more. And now we're going to just sort of move this fog around. So go to the location values, and on the X we can adjust it. And I'm kind of happy with the fog just being here. So if we increase this back to, or decrease this back to 1 to try and get a bit more height back in, that's looking okay. Fog patches, if we reduce this, there will be less patches, and if we increase it, there will be more sort of clear patches. So if, as you see, if we increase that, we're getting a bit more space between the clearing. Oopsie daisies. Rendered mode. Make sure the fog is selected, and we're just going to move it up a little bit. I don't think we need to move it up much further than, sorry, move it down a little bit, so it's actually sitting on the surface of the water. So we're going to reduce these patches back to 0.5. And maybe move this around a little bit more. I think maybe here, something like that. Let's have a look at the Y location. I think maybe where we had it before was nicest. Yeah, so wherever we had it earlier. Like that. That's looking nice. Okay. And we can change the colour of this too, so it doesn't just like have to be a white fog. We can set this to sort of any colour that we want. So I think we're probably going to go for more of a sandy colour, and just set this colour quite high so it looks a bit more dusty. And we can change the colour of this here too. And then if we go to a more balanced sort of render preset, this will go a lot thicker. So let's just set these values to something like 2. And then let's reduce this back down. I think we've lost the fog. Let's increase it a little bit more. There we go. And let's set this to something like 1. Right, so that's where I want my surface fog to be. I'm going to scale it up on the Z just a little bit, so we get a bit more like floatiness, bumpiness, and I'm just going to apply that scale. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the surface fog. We're going to select this object again, and now we're going to add, maybe if we select this object, and now we're going to add a rolling fog. So how does a rolling fog work? So a rolling fog is similar, but it is just designed for bigger objects. So rolling fogs are what you would usually have sort of around mountains and hills and things like that, as you can see here. So we're going to scale this down because I don't need it to be that big. We're going to apply the scale for now, and we're going to change the fog scale values to something like 5 and 5, just to see if we can get a bit of fog showing. Yep, great. Set this down to something like 2. And we're going to scale it down on the, no we're not, we're going to rotate it on the Z. a little bit. Something like that. And then we're going to rotate it on its maybe y-axis. Yes, it's y-axis. Move it up on the Z a little bit more. And we can scale it up on the Z if we wanted to, sort of give it a bit more depth. And then we can scale it out across all again. And then just apply that scale. And now we can fiddle with these fog scale values. So if we want this to be a little bit more sort of rolly, like so, we can do that. And then we can adjust the location values of this. So I don't really like where the fog is sitting at the minute. So I'm going to move that around. But I do like this effect. And is there anything I want to adjust in the formation to make it look a bit more like it's flowing off? Yep, brilliant. And we're going to change the color of this a little bit. So I'm going to bring a sort of tan color in here and then bring this down to a darker color and just increase that there. And then we can set this to something like 0.1 and see if we get a little bit. Amazing. So now that's the effect we got there. It looks like dust is coming off the top of these sort of mountains. And if we go back and enable the surface fog, we can see that we've got this nice fog across the surface here too. And now, if we enable back our clouds, we can see that our clouds have come in too. And we are on a fast render preset. So let's increase the quality a touch. And there we go. Now, obviously, what we need to do is, like any great artist, go back over everything that we've done because we're no longer happy with it. So we can put the fog back on. And now we're going to reduce the height of the sun to maybe something like 5 and reduce the rotation a bit. So I want the sun to sort of come across here. I'm going to decrease the intensity. I'm going to decrease the intensity of the sky too. Let's just turn the clouds off for now and increase the height of this maybe a bit. What happens if what's the effect if we reduce the height of it? Okay, yeah, that's nice. It's lighting up this one side here. We can see the fog through here. I don't like that either. So I'm going to reduce the amount. Maybe come over the back of these hills. Don't you hate it when what you had first was what you actually wanted? So let's increase the intensity of the sun. Let's increase the intensity of the sky. Let's decrease the intensity a touch of the sky. Let's add a little bit more ozone in. Maybe look at changing the color of the air. It's too blue, so let's increase that. Do we need to increase the dust a bit? Just a touch, and we can put our clouds back in. And now that's basically done. Got over everything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to render this out and sort of see what it looks like. And there we have it, guys. So that is now the final output. We've obviously got you can see in the background, the dusty rolling fog that we created. We got our clouds. We can see that we've got our clouds a little bit noisier than I would have liked. But that's just on me for not upping the sample count a bit more. Our surface fog looks really like surface fog. Just gives it that kind of nice sort of rolling dust or a little bit of water evaporating and lingering around. Yeah. So that's how we use all of the functions and how we light the scenes and add the clouds. I hope that was helpful to everyone. If you've got any suggestions for any other tutorials, please leave a comment down below or join us on our Discord channel and leave some feedback there. Right, everyone, I will see you all in the next one.